welcome to the first Tech Lunch Pail Live. Will this be the last? We'll see, but we're glad that you are watching today before the biggest game here in a long time, the Virginia Tech Clemson Saturday night ACC Showdown. We have a great crew of guests. We have Jackson Pugh, we have Josh Parcell, David Cunningham, Evan Hughes. It's a great crew, and we're excited to preview today's game, but we're going to start looking back at the season as a whole. And Josh, I'm going to start with you first. We're looking at this offense. Josh Jackson, taking over for Gerard Evans, has really matured in that opening game, and we've seen him play pretty well, especially against East Carolina since.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I don't think anybody expected him to have the kind of poise and control that we saw from the very beginning. The thing I say about Josh Jackson is, with most freshman quarterbacks, you see the physical side right out of the gate, and it's the mental side that has to catch up. For Josh Jackson, the mental side he's got down pat. He was in control. He's a coach's son. He's been playing for a long, long time. Can you imagine what's going to look like when the physical side catches up? He already looks pretty good. Imagine what happens when the physical attributes, he catches up to the speed of the game, the arm. Because right now, some of those deep balls he's thrown in the last few games, somewhat are a little underthrown. He's not completely accurate. I mean, the numbers look good, but he's playing Delaware and Old Dominion. Let's keep that in mind, okay? But once the physical side catches up, and we'll see what it looks like tomorrow night, he's going to be a special player for a long, long time.
Yeah, we've already seen the mental maturity, especially in that second half against West Virginia, going blow for blow against Will Greer. And then you look at the weapons he has. It's not a lot, but there's Cam Phillips and David. What a playmaker Cam Phillips has developed into this year.
Yeah, I mean, Cam Phillips, he leads the nation in receiving yards, 523 receiving yards a season. He's averaged 89 yards a game, I think. So he's the most developed playmaker on the team. But I think we need other guys to step up. Like C.J. Carroll hasn't gotten in the action all the way yet, and Sean Savoy is there, but he hasn't had as many plays as we would like him to have. Even James Clark, the transfer from Ohio State, probably one of the fastest kids on the team, he hasn't fully gotten the amount of receptions he probably should get. So I think, but with having Cam Phillips, having that security blanket, as Josh Jackson called it in the press conference, having that security blanket there, it really, really helps us. And he had 14 receptions against Delaware. I mean, that was huge. So
yeah. It's insane the way Cam is playing. You just look at the numbers. Could you have imagined 5-10 years ago a Virginia Tech receiver being on pace to have 1,500 receiving yards, leading the nation in receiving yards, being the top 5 in every major receiving stat?
That's crazy.
That is just an incredible fact. Now, as we shift to the defense a little, Evan, this rush defense has been phenomenal through the first few games. They've been lights out. There are a couple runs Justin Crawford had in the opener, but otherwise they have been dominant so far.
Well, they really have, and they took a little while to get going against West Virginia, but I've been really impressed talking about the defense. Guys like Vinny Mahota, somebody that Justin Fuente talked about in his press conference, who's not only been a leader on the field but off the field. The way he's been playing at the nose tackle lately has been phenomenal. And then you look at the linebacking core. David and I were talking about it before the show started, just in Jackson, thinking about this linebacking core doesn't get enough credit nationally for the way they're playing. Andrew Matua-Pawaka, Mook Reynolds, the way he tackles when he gets in the game, and then the secondary. I was really impressed with how they played down the stretch against West Virginia. You can look at the stats of that game and how many yards they gave up, but only allowing 24 points, and they were able to stand tall in that last drive. I think you have to give a lot of credit to Bud Foster, of course, for the job he's done this year, and I'm really curious to see how this rush defense does against a pretty good offensive line in Clemson tomorrow night. I think it's going to be a great matchup to watch.
It should be a fascinating one to watch. And you mentioned the secondary as well. One of the key playmakers that night was Adonis Alexander. And Jackson, it's up in the air, his status for Saturday Night Showdown. How big of an impact will it be if Alexander is in the game, or if they're going to go with just Stroman and facing that corner and don't have Alexander?
Well, Virginia Tech might be lucky this week because Clemson does not have the greatest passing offense in the country. Kelly Bryant's the first-year starter for the Tigers, and his touchdown-to-interception ratio is 2-3. He has not really had to put the ball up in the air because of that great run game. Yeah. But I don't see any receivers on this Clemson offense that could really give us any problems. That being said, though, ECU gave us some problems in the third game after Alexander's suspension because we had to make all these adjustments in the secondary. There was a lack of communication. So virtually we had a lot of problems. And if we can't adapt this week to the Diablo injury and we don't adapt to Alexander's suspension, assuming he doesn't play, it doesn't matter which offense we're facing, whether it's the 128th ranked offense in the FBS or the Clemson Tigers offense or whoever.
Yeah.
It's going to be a problem if guys are wide open down the field.
Yeah, and you look at just the Diablo injury. We've seen him a lot working more on those passing downs, whereas Floyd is not as great in pass coverage. We'll see, especially if Bud Foster does run a lot of man coverage like he traditionally does, if we'll see Floyd if Clemson will try to go after Floyd, whether it be with Deion Kane or Ray McLeod or whoever. But we're going to do a couple rapid fire questions on the season so far. So we're going to start first with a look at some of the surprises. Who are y'all's surprises of the season so far? And Jackson, we'll start and work our way around the table.
Yep. Well, Jackson starts with Jackson. I mean, he's one of the most pleasant surprises in college football in 2017. You look at him, he has 11 touchdowns, 1 interceptions, and considering the fact that he lost 3 of his top 4 targets from a season ago, actually, and he wasn't the one throwing the ball either. So the fact that he's done this with a bunch of young guys and, of course, Cam Phillips, to me is very impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're stating the obvious there with Josh Jackson. I don't think anybody would debate he has been the most pleasant surprise for Virginia Tech. But at the same time, you know who's been a surprise on the other end of the spectrum is Joey Sly. And his struggles in the kicking game, that could play a huge role tomorrow night. You think about Clemson losing their kicker to a torn ACL 2 weeks ago. They're going to have some inexperienced kicker. You would like to feel comfortable with your kicking game if you're Virginia Tech, knowing that this game could come down in the fourth quarter to a field goal here or there. I mean, these teams, I look back at the Penn State-Iowa game a week ago, and Iowa was completely outmatched by Penn State. They were outgained by almost 300 yards, but they kept Penn State out of the end zone, and Penn State was able to make some field goals, score some points. I think Virginia Tech's going to have to play a similar game tomorrow night. Keep it low scoring. They cannot get into a shootout with Clemson. They do not have the firepower to keep up with the Tigers. But in a game that could come down to some field goals, can you rely on Joey Sly? He's been a guy who's been reliable for 3 years, and now all of a sudden this season he has not played well. That's going to be a big factor that I'm keeping my eye on tomorrow night.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, Josh said it. Joey Sly 7 for 12 this season. He's missed 5. But my surprise, I don't know how much of a surprise it is, but Alexander. I mean, Alexander came in. He's our most physical and our tallest corner, and he should be. I mean, you have Stroman, but Alexander should be the guy that he's the big physical guy. He matches up with the biggest and most physical receiver on the team. But after the Delaware game, Alexander, he's suspended. And so now, I mean, I don't know. We don't exactly know because Coach Fuente won't talk about it. But, I mean, it could be a variety of things. But we need Alexander back, and especially against Clemson. If we don't have him, that's probably our biggest weakness.
I would expect him to play.
Yeah,
I think he did practice this weekend.
Yes, from everything I have heard.
Yeah,
that's
good.
I'm not breaking news and saying he will play.
No,
but the smoke around the program that I've heard is Alexander's going to play tomorrow.
And I've heard that exact same sentiment.
Yeah.
It's looking likely that Adonis will play Saturday night.
That'd be really good. Evan?
For me, coming into the season, something Fuente harped on was that the offense, it's going to be done by committee this year. One thing that has really impressed me has been the play of Trayvon McMillan. Considering the fact he was a 1,000-yard rusher his freshman year, Fuente comes in and kind of uses him in a different way that Beamer and Leffler did in his freshman year. And I think his stat, he's scored in 7 straight games or some stat that, I mean, he had a great game against East Carolina.
Yeah.
He is, I believe he scored on that jump pass from Jackson. You know, he fakes the quarterback draw up the middle. He has been the stability piece on offense in the backfield, and I think that he is going to need to be huge tomorrow in a sense of he's been there before, he's been in these big environments, and I think that he has really impressed me in these first 4 games that he still has it, and he has the capabilities of being the every down lead running back for Fuente and Cornelson.
And I love how you bring up McMillan and looking at tomorrow night's game as well. McMillan's going to have a large role in this rushing attack. Stephen Peoples, surprisingly, was on the injury report yesterday, and I am hearing that it's not likely that he's going to play tomorrow night. So that is some significant news if that does end up being true.
Absolutely.
Especially with Peoples being that power guy so far this year. McLeese, he's shown he can run between the tackles, but McMillan would kind of translate more to being the power guy. So
absolutely.
And now looking a little at the opposite side, and Josh, you already mentioned with Joey Sly, but some of the remaining concerns with this team, and if any of y'all, beyond just Joey Sly on the offense or the defense, if there's any really big concern still with this team?
So my biggest concern is, are they going to eliminate the home run plays on Clemson's side of the ball? Clemson has 5 plays this season of more than 50 yards. Virginia Tech has 1. Clemson has a much better explosive offense. Okay, they can hit the big momentum-changing type plays. And Virginia Tech, if you look at what Bud Foster does over the course of his entire career, he's an aggressive attacking defense. Now, what that does is it forces the other team to make mistakes. It also allows you to be susceptible on the back end to some big plays. He's going to leave Adonis Alexander, Brandon Faison, Greg Stroman. He's going to leave them out in man coverage on islands, and they're going to have to be able to contain Deion Kane, Ray McLeod, Hunter Renfrow one-on-one. That's a tall order, and if Clemson can hit a couple home run plays, that can take the crowd out of the game a little bit. That's especially in the first quarter. Can you just eliminate the big momentum changers? I'm worried that Kelly Bryant can get a little confident early with a couple big plays, and then once he settles in, that could spell doom for Virginia Tech. That's the biggest thing I'm worried about.
What I'm most worried about is a slow start. We've seen it the last 4 games that the offense has taken a couple quarters. 7-3 was the end of the first quarter against Old Dominion. Delaware, it took a while. Even West Virginia, it took the second half to get the offense going. For Virginia Tech to win this game, they have to get out to an early lead. They cannot be the team trailing from behind coming into the second half. They need to come out, make a statement on offense. I know they like to defer the second half. I would like to see maybe they even take the ball to start the first half. Switch it up, get confidence in Josh Jackson. And I think to your point, Josh, the first quarter is going to be pivotal. The nerves, the excitement. We've already talked, this might be one of the biggest games in Lane Stadium history in the last decade. Can Virginia Tech control the nerves? I have no doubt that Coach Fuente and Foster are going to have those guys focused and ready to go. But that first quarter, the jitters, the college game day, all of the hype leading into this game, that's what concerns me most is how does Virginia Tech start this game?
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with you. And we look at this matchup, the prime time, the big stage. How will they handle this when an offense, it's kind of like that lawnmower where you've left it in the shed for a few months, spring's just starting, got to cut the grass, you're pulling it a few times, takes about 10 pulls to get going. That's what Virginia Tech's offense has been like at times this year. Will that happen Saturday night? If it does, it's going to make life a lot more difficult against a Clemson team that knows how to win on the biggest stage. So we're going to kind of shift to take a look at Clemson, and we're fortunate to have Josh Parcell, who writes for College Football Country, kind of has a national field base more in the Charlotte area, so not far from Clemson at all. And first, a little bit about Kelly Bryant. He's got only three interceptions so far, which is not bad, especially for a young quarterback. But he's proven to be a dual threat playmaker. He's second on the team in rushing. What have you seen from Kelly Bryant so far?
Well, you hit it right on the head. He's proven to be a more capable runner than I think anyone expected him to be. And look, he's doing an impossible task right now, trying to replace Deshaun Watson. And what Deshaun Watson was able to do for that team, not just on the field, but his leadership and his ability off the field was, I think, the biggest void to replace on that roster for Clemson. And Kelly Bryant seems like he's done that. The players have rallied around him. He won the quarterback battle in the fall, and he has the respect of that locker room. And those guys go to battle for him. I know people inside the Clemson program who have told me that. He's different than Deshaun. Deshaun was a quiet guy, more calm demeanor. Kelly's a little more energetic, and the players feed off of that. Now, on the field, you talk about the interceptions. Now, he does have more interceptions than touchdowns so far. He hasn't looked dominant, certainly, as a passer, but Clemson hasn't needed him to be. This is a team in Clemson this season. Reminds me a lot of Alabama a year ago. Alabama relied on the defense. They had a young quarterback in Jalen Hurts who was not a reliable passer, but a guy who could move the ball with his legs. You had great running backs like Clemson does with Feaster and some of those other guys. Can they just do enough on the ground? Allow Kelly Bryant to just make a couple plays a game. That's all they need. They don't need him to be Deshaun Watson. They don't need him to be Superman. That's what he's done so far. Now, having said that, I think that this defense is the best defense they played so far. It's certainly better than Louisville's. I think it's on par, if not better than Auburn's, and this is on the road. So this is the toughest test Kelly Bryant has faced so far this season. And like I said before, Bud Foster is going to dial up that sort of pressure. I wonder how Bryant is going to be able to respond under pressure. Can he make throws under duress? If Virginia Tech, guys like Vinny Mahota, you were talking about earlier, can contain the run game and force Clemson to second and long, third and long, where they're not dictating the sticks, they're not dictating the tempo of the game a little bit, then you're all of a sudden putting Kelly Bryant in a position he hasn't been in yet. And that is where I think you see Virginia Tech have an advantage. That's what they're going to have to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you look at Kelly Bryant, a young guy, kind of up and coming. He's still a lot of experience. We'll get some questions here later on once we get more into the preview.
Keep your hand down.
And we've got Facebook Live questions, too, coming later in the show as well.
Yeah, we'll get to that here in a few minutes. But you mentioned some of the skill position guys. Clemson has always had a lot of receivers. You just look at the NFL guys as well. But this Clemson receiving core isn't maybe as great as some of them in terms of star power, but there's a lot of talent there.
Yeah, I mean, Deion Kane he's had some off-the-field issues in the past in his career. He missed the national championship game 2 years ago with a suspension. But since he's been on the field, he has first-round talent. And we may not know the name quite like we did with a Mike Williams a year ago or guys in the past, Sammy Watkins, DeAndre Hopkins. We will know his name. If he continues to play and live up to his potential, he is the best, most talented receiver on that team. Hunter Renfrow caught the game-winning touchdown in the national championship last season. He's a terrific. He is. Not to get all stereotypical, he's the Danny Cole of that Clemson team. He's the possession white guy that makes the catches that you need. Exactly. He's the gritty lunch pail guy, brings it, clocks in, clocks out. That's his guy. Hunter Renfrow is a great player for them and a valuable player who may not have the star power, like I said, of the former receivers they've had at Clemson, but they've got weapons. And I know you were saying earlier you don't think that Clemson may have the weapons. I would actually disagree a little bit. I think that Clemson has a ton of firepower. Ray McCloud is another guy who doesn't have the accolades yet. He has put together some big games. There was a game a year ago, I forget who they played early in the season, where I think he had over 150 yards receiving. I may be wrong about the exact number, but he had a big game, and that was a game right after Mike Williams had been injured. And look, I think that this Clemson receiving core is deep. I think it's fast. I think it's going to really test this Virginia Tech secondary.
I absolutely agree with that. And now looking at the defense, this Clemson defense is one of the best in America. You have a defensive line that Justin Fuente said it himself has an embarrassment of riches. You have a linebacking core with tons of talent, a secondary with a lot of talent, but some injuries as well. How do you think this Clemson defense will hold up, and what type of challenge is Josh Jackson facing Saturday night?
Well, just ask Jarrett Stidham what kind of challenge he's under, because Jarrett Stidham got sacked 11 times in that Auburn game a couple weeks ago. That was when the Clemson defensive line really flexed its muscles and showed what it's capable of. They've got 3, maybe 4 future first-round picks on the defensive line. I mean, it is, without question, the best defensive line in all of college football, and that's factoring in Ohio State, Alabama, Houston has a great defensive line. Clemson is the best in the country with Christian Wilkins, Dexter Lawrence, who's the best of the bunch. He's not even eligible for the draft after this year. He'll be a top 5 pick in 2 seasons, I guarantee it. It's a totally different beast. And Clemson, that's the beauty of Clemson's defense is they can generate so much pressure with that front four. They don't need to bring a ton of pressure. They don't need to blitz. They can sit 6 and 7 guys back in coverage and force a quarterback like Josh Jackson to make plays. I'm telling you, we'll get to predictions later in the game, but I have a hard time seeing Josh Jackson be able to dissect this defense when his only reliable weapon is Cam Phillips. Yeah. If you've got 7 or 8 guys in coverage, you can maybe double team Cam Phillips. A lot of times bracket, shade your coverage towards him. Who else is there to make the plays? Savoy has looked nice, but again, that was against Delaware and Old Dominion and East Carolina. You're not going to have that luxury. And with Clemson's defensive line, that is the key. The secondary, thankfully for Clemson, or at least on there, thankfully if you're a Clemson fan, looks like it's a little more healthy than we thought it was going to be. Trayvon Millen looks like he's going to play. I forget the other guy's name who was injured. Fields looks like he's going to play. And then the third one is doubtful, but they're going to have almost full strength in the secondary, which was huge. If those guys were missing, I would have given Virginia Tech a little bit more chance, especially to move the ball through the air. With those guys playing, it's going to be tough sledding.
Yeah, absolutely. Now as we shift kind of looking at briefly at the magnitude of this game, and there's a lot of college football playoff implications as well. These two are the highest 2 ranked teams right now in the ACC. This is kind of looking like potentially a preview of the ACC's championship. So, David, what do you think about if whoever loses this game, especially let's say if it's Virginia Tech currently only being ranked 12th, do you think they have the path to where they can win the ACC and get to the playoff?
So Heather Dinich wrote a very nice article from ESPN, and it really described, I think, how it would play out. And she said, compare it to a Georgia-Alabama game where if they're the 2 best teams, they're both 4-0 and undefeated, but if whoever loses, you can't count them out. And I think if Clemson loses, obviously, if Tech wins, that'll be the biggest win in a while. But then you can't count out Clemson because Clemson will still have the edge in the Atlantic Division, and they'll probably meet up in the championship game. But for Tech, if we lose, I don't think it's the end of the story. I think we don't have as difficult of a schedule as Clemson does, and I mean we go at Boston College next weekend, bye week, North Carolina, Duke. I think Miami and Georgia Tech are a little trippy games, but I think neither of these teams should be counted out no matter what happens, and I think that if Tech wins, this place is going to go crazy. If Tech wins. But if Tech,
you'll have a few more people in your front yard if Tech wins on Saturday night.
There'll be a whole lot more.
College game day will be here if Tech wins. But I think even if Clemson wins, even if Tech loses, I think Tech fans still have a lot to look forward to. And I think that it's not the end of the story that I think we could see Tech Clemson ACC championship game rematch of last year.
Yeah, and I know Evan's going to go out and he's going to take some questions from our crowd here for us and extend them out. But as he goes out, we get some cheers from out there.
You guys have some groupies.
Yeah. Jackson, real quick, we look at this game and look at Tech's schedule the rest of the year. Do you think there's enough wins there outside of a potential ACC championship to where if they lose tonight, they can build a good resume?
Yeah. I don't know. We're going to have to be big West Virginia fans. We're going to have to hope that they keep it up.
Yeah.
They didn't look great last week against Kansas, so we'll see how that turns out.
And that Miami-Duke game as well is going to be interesting to watch. That'll be huge in the Coastal race. But we got some questions out there. Evan, what do you got?
All right, well, first of all, let's start with some questions. Our first question here on Tech Lunch Pail Live. What's your name?
Hey, my name is Cole. I'm a sophomore at Tech.
What's up, Cole?
My question is, you guys have touched a little bit on Kelly Bryant and his skill. He's a young guy, just like Josh Jackson. But he's proven that he's maybe not so good at throwing, but he's lethal with his feet.
Yes.
Kind of reminds me of Michael Vick in the way that I've seen him play. What do you think the key is in stopping that is tomorrow night?
I think the key, like I said, the defensive line is going to have to get pressure up the middle on him, force him to the outside. The runs he made against Louisville that were most successful were some inside zone read type runs, where you got two backs in the backfield, similar to what Alabama does with Jalen Hurts, where you just don't know who to stop. You got three running backs, you got to a lot of times pick. It's kind of like playing Georgia Tech almost out of the shotgun, and Kelly Bryant is a similar type dynamic player. You saw what Georgia Tech did a year ago to this team with a backup quarterback. Kelly Bryant's a little more talented than Matthew Thomas was for Georgia Tech. I think if they can force him to the outside, you said Michael Vick. I wouldn't go that far. I don't think he has the same type of top-end speed that a guy like Lamar Jackson or Michael Vick has. I think those types of guys are most dangerous when they're able to get through the second level up the middle. Force them to the sideline. Virginia Tech has an extremely fast defense. The guys like the Edmonds brothers and Hill on the defensive line, they've got speed. So if you can make them go side to side and you can run laterally and try and trace them down towards the sideline, I think that's where they would have the most success. But again, for Clemson, they're going to need Kelly Bryant to run the football tomorrow night to be successful because Virginia Tech's going to bring pressure, and I think they're going to force them into a couple mistakes through the air.
And adding on to that real quickly as well, I think it's going to be critical for the linebackers to keep their assignments well, not try to do too much, but play into their assignments, fill their gaps. And then also I think it's going to be critical on passing downs. We saw at ODU, Stephen Williams, their quarterback, he was able to kind of break the pocket and get outside and make some plays. Keeping containment is going to be very important because we've seen Tech have issues in the past with the mobile quarterback. This is a prototypical mobile quarterback that Tech and Bud Foster have had issues with over the past few years. Keeping him, containing him in the pocket, and making him beat you with his arm is going to be critical.
Yeah, and I think an interesting stat I don't think anybody said yet is Clemson scored 20 touchdowns. 3 of them have been receiving touchdowns. 17 of them have been rushing touchdowns. Kelly Bryant has 7 rushing touchdowns. He has 10. He has almost half of all their rushing touchdowns. If the defensive ends and the defensive tackles and the linebackers can keep him contained and stack the box and make sure he doesn't get outside the pocket, I think we have a good chance to keep him contained. Now, Josh said that they have 5 plays of over 50 yards. I think if we play single coverage, and I think our cornerbacks are good enough, but it's whether or not we can keep them in the pocket. And that's going to be the linebackers and defensive ends, and to make sure that they can just contain him and make sure he doesn't escape.
Yeah, well, let's take the next question, and then we're going to shift back to our preview, and we'll get some of those Facebook Live questions after we finish up our preview because some of our guests have some other obligations today as well, and you'll be able to see Josh with some of his stuff. And some of our guests today and our riders, of course, are students here at Virginia Tech. They have classes.
Yeah, get to class. Come on, guys.
That's a practical thing.
Stop horsing around talking about football.
We'll take one more question here. So go ahead and say your name and your question.
So, I'm Ryan. I'm a freshman at Tech. Outside of the big name players, who do you think is like a dark horse that could come out and surprise everybody and play a big key role in the game?
What do you guys think?
I'm going to start with a Clemson guy, actually. Travis Etienne. He's a guy who is averaging 12.7 yards per carry. He's had only 23 carries, but 12.7 yards. He basically took over in the fourth quarter last week against Boston College, and is why a game that Clemson just slept on Boston College and made it so close, why it ended up being 34-7. His role is growing with Adam Choice a little banged up for Clemson. I expect Etienne to continue to have a bigger role. He's a true freshman running back. He looks like a star, and I think he could be the X factor in this game that changes this game, flips it upside down.
You know who I'm looking at? Dalton Keene for Virginia Tech.
I was about to say
that's
too.
a guy. I mean, think about what Sam Rogers was to this team over the last few years. You go back to the Ohio State game 2 years ago. I mean, he had that huge catch down the sideline, the little juke move that
wheel
got
route.
into the end zone. Exactly. Sam Rogers was the safety valve for this team for the last few years. I mean, it was a guy who Justin Fuente, fell in love with from day one when he got to Blacksburg. Yeah. He wants to find the next Sam Rogers, that utility belt guy who can kind of, contribute in the passing game. Exactly. Yeah. Dalton Keene can be that guy. We saw little emergence last week. It was the first time I think that we'd really seen flashes of what Keene can be, and I think that in this game tomorrow night, we talked about how the receivers may have some trouble getting separation. Is Keene the guy who they may be able to use in some unorthodox situations? I'm keeping my eye on Dalton Keene tomorrow night. If Virginia Tech wins, I think it's because Keene steps up and has one or two plays that may make a difference.
Absolutely agree. And to your point about Dalton Keene and Sam Rogers, great comparison. But think about it this way. I know Fuente preaches the whole 1-0 mentality, everything. But you're playing Delaware, East Carolina, Old Dominion. They don't have to throw the entire playbook out for those three games.
Right.
They understand that Clemson, they're great watching tape. They're going to watch every play of the last 3 games. I wouldn't be surprised if there are some set plays, whether it's from Dalton Keene or Sean Savoy or maybe Eric Kuma, C.J. Carroll, somebody. There's got to be some things that Cornelson and Fuente have been drawing up that has not been seen yet in any game this year. So look for, I think Dalton Keene, you hit it nail on the head. That tight end role. Tech hasn't really had a strong tight end, think about it, since maybe Greg Boone back 08, 09. And Josh Jackson, he likes those big targets. And my big thing is Cam Phillips is going to be double teamed at points tomorrow.
Absolutely.
And you look at the stats. He has, I think you said it, 524 receiving yards.
523, yeah.
You look at the next highest rated receiver with receiving yards for Tech, it's Savoy with 123. Somebody's going to have to step up in the passing game. So to your question, I think it's going to have to be someone, whether it's Keene, Savoy, Carroll, one of those three is going to have a big night tomorrow. That's who I'm looking out for.
And I love how you mentioned kind of how Cornelson and the offense have been holding some stuff back. I think you're going to see a lot of the run-pass option. We saw it a lot against West Virginia. We've rarely seen it since then. There's been no reason for them to pull it out. It was very successful against West Virginia, and I think you're going to see them try to use it a lot tomorrow night. So we're going to shift some rapid-fire keys to the game. What's a key to the game for y'all? We'll start with Jackson right here.
I think the key to the game is that offensive line. They're going to have a very, very tough task against that front four. But it's going to be important that Tech doesn't turn the football over, that they don't make big mistakes. Josh Jackson just needs to be Josh Jackson, the cool, calm, poised decision maker that has not made bad decisions with the football. So if we can somehow stop Josh Jackson from running all over the place, which we've done a good job of thus far this year, but this is a different animal. So I'm very interested to see how that matchup will go.
I think you hit it on with turnovers is a really big key. You think about what Justin Fuente has done in the first year and a half here in Blacksburg. They haven't been blown out of any game with the exception of Tennessee. And why were they blown out against Tennessee? Because they turned the ball over 6 times. They hung toe-to-toe with Tennessee in that game for 4 quarters outside of turning the football over. And Justin Fuente has preached this. He benched Gerard Evans against Liberty last year for turning the ball over. He does not like to see those type of unforced errors. If they turn the ball over against Clemson, they will not win tomorrow night. Flat out, period. They have to take care of the football. And so my key to the game going off of that is handling the pressure. Clemson has been here 100 times. They've been on, this is the second time in 3 weeks they've had College Game Day. This doesn't matter to them. It was on the road against Louisville in primetime 2 weeks ago. They played for 2 national championship games. These guys, this is just another game for Clemson. This ain't just another game for Virginia Tech. This is the most important game Virginia Tech has played in over a decade. I think going back all the way to 1999, I think this is the most important game. Not necessarily the biggest on the national scale. They've had big ones since then. But as far as what this would mean for the future of the program, there is all the pressure in the world right now on those guys, and I hope that Justin Fuente is able to keep that under control. Hope that those players play with poise. They don't make those mistakes. Get off to a fast start, like you said. Cannot let Clemson get ahead. The first quarter is going to determine how this game's going to go. There's not going to be an Arkansas-Notre Dame comeback in this game. I don't see that happening. They've got to hang toe-to-toe for 4 quarters with them if they want to have a chance at the end.
Yeah, I mean, I think, in my opinion, the offense will sort itself out. I'm more concerned about Kelly Bryant, and I think Jackson has 11 touchdowns, 1 interception. He has 1,183 yards. So he hasn't turned the ball over much. We had 1 fumble from Cam Phillips. Besides that, we haven't turned the ball over at all. I think we keep that up, like you guys said. We keep that up and we'll be fine. I think on the defensive side of the ball, containing Kelly Bryant is the key. Bud Foster's going to stack the box. Bud Foster probably has been watching Boston College film all this week. He's going to stack the box, and produce some schemes that Kelly Bryant's. I mean, this is Kelly Bryant's first 4 good quality games.
Right.
So he hasn't had much experience. So he's going to throw weird things at him, and I think it'll be a key that we contain Kelly Bryant because he only has 3 passing touchdowns. If we contain them and we contain Kelly Bryant so he can't run outside the pocket because he's gained 7 of his touchdowns just by running outside. So I think if we contain him inside, and I think our defensive line will eventually get to him. And we don't have as much depth, but I think over the course of the last 4 games, the first game against West Virginia, you could tell we were getting very, very tired on the line. We didn't have as many subs. But I think the next 3 games, we've gained more and more depth on the line. And I think having that depth will help us. And I think having guys who are experienced in the secondary will help us. I think just containing Kelly Bryant is the key to the game.
Yeah.
For me, it's being able to make in-game adjustments. Clemson's going to come at us, and besides that, even though I said it before, and we talked about fast start, that's my number one thing, getting out to the early. But besides that, there are going to be times in this game where Clemson's going to shut some things down, whether it's halftime. Bud Foster's a genius at it, but especially on the offensive side, if the run-pass option isn't working, being able to do different things offensively, not continuously trying to run it up the middle, expanding the range of different offensive plays. And secondly, we touched on it, the confidence of Joey Sly. That's something that, is he going to have the confidence tomorrow? That's something we're really going to need, and I think he's going to be ready. Joey's a mental guy. I think listening to Tech Talk Live on Monday, it's something that he thinks that he went back and watched. He figured it out, but that's a huge key for me in this game. I mean, this could come down to a 40-yard field goal, last play of the game. How is he going to react to that? Special teams, and if we could get a block kick or a punt, beamer ball, this place would erupt. I tell you what, the fans are going to play. Some people are saying that the fans won't play a big role in this. I had to disagree with that. The environment of Lane Stadium is different than Papa John's Stadium in Louisville. This is Lane Stadium. This is Enter Sandman. And I think the fans, which I'm sure they will, they're going to have to come to play tomorrow. This
will be the loudest game in I've been going to Blacksburg games since 1995. Tomorrow night will be the loudest Lane Stadium has ever been.
Absolutely.
I promise you.
It's going to be absolutely insane. And I love how you mentioned the environment. I think controlling your emotions. You should be fired up to play in a game like this, but playing under control, playing with discipline, avoiding penalties, which Tech has done a fantastic job of so far this year. Limiting penalties will be important. So let's get some picks here real quick. We'll start with Jackson and we'll go down the line here.
Well, Tech has not turned the football over this year, and I don't think that's going to change. I don't think we'll have a big game offensively, but I think we'll do just enough. We might find Cam once or twice, and that will be the opportunities that we just take advantage of. And our defense is going to be challenged with this running game this week, but I have a lot of confidence in our linebacking core. I think it's one of the best in the country with Mook, Motu Puaka, and Edmonds. So I think we'll neutralize the run game. I have yet to see something from the Clemson pass game. I know you mentioned they had some talent, but it's
got to prove it.
Yep, they got it.
They got to prove it.
They got to get the guys the football.
Yeah.
So this is a bold prediction, but I think Tech will make a big mark in college football this weekend. They will go back to the championship program that they once were. I say 21-20 Tech.
Ooh, okay, all right. So, I've given my thoughts on the game. We've talked about it ad nauseum all week. I think this is going to be an electric atmosphere in Blacksburg. Enter Sandman is going to be insane. I don't think they have the weapons to win the football game, and I'm going to be honest with you. Now, I'll tell you right now, I think Clemson's going to win 28-17. I'm getting boos from the crowd. I think Clemson wins 28-17. Now, having said that, like we talked about earlier, I didn't get a chance to jump in. If they lose this game, they can still win the ACC. They can still make the college football playoff. Totally. If they win out after this, that's a tall order. I don't think this team is invincible by any stretch of the imagination, going up against Duke and Miami and some of the other schools on that schedule. They can lose tomorrow night and they still have a shot.
Yep.
But tomorrow night, be competitive. Give yourself a chance in the fourth quarter. Stay close in this game. Don't get run out of your own building. That's the goal, I think, for Virginia Tech right now. And if they win, great. They have a shot. Not saying they don't. My head says Clemson 28-17.
I'm gonna go. I have a bold prediction. I'll tell you in a second. But I think Jackson hasn't turned the ball over. I think the receivers are going to do enough. And I think what's really going to help us is going to be the play-action game. And I think if we can get the ball out wide to the receivers early and fast, like Evan said, fast start, I think if Savoy and C.J. Carroll and Phillips, they can all work together with Jackson and be on the same page early and get, those out routes, get those going, get good passes going. I think it will open up McMillan in the run game. And I think even Jackson, a couple little runs, 5 yard, 7 yard runs, I think that will be a big factor. Now, I think defensively, Tech will be able to contain them. I think Clemson and Kelly Bryant will put up a couple points, but I think they won't be able to contain them all the way. But I think they'll be able to hold them back enough where Clemson doesn't, Kelly Bryant doesn't rush for 4 touchdowns and throw for 300 yards. I think it'll be like Bryant throws for 190 yards and rushes for a good, 80 yards and maybe a touchdown or 2. I'm picking Tech 27-20.
As much as a student and a lifelong fan of Tech, I would love to see that place rocked, which it's going to rock, but afterwards, downtown, the environment.
Oh, yeah.
I go back to what Josh said. One, I don't think Tech has enough depth at wide receiver to win this game. But more importantly, I don't think Tech has enough depth on the defensive line to – I'm worried about – the second rotation of guys being not Vinny Mahota, not worried about but I'm worried about the guys coming in and how they use the second rotation, whether they do 2 defensive ends and keep Mahota in, and what they're going to do. I'm sure Bud's going to have a plan, but the key to this is going to come down to, can Tech not let Kelly Bryant stand in the pocket and have all day to throw? I just think Clemson just has enough talent to win this game over Tech. I'm going to go 31-24 Clemson. I think it's going to be close the entire way. And let me say this. I would not be surprised if Tech wins this game.
Me neither.
But I think Clemson has the experience in being here, especially in the last couple weeks, and I like the Tigers to win this one 31-24.
Yeah, and as much I think Tech has a great chance to win. It would not surprise me whatsoever.
Oh, you're going to break the tie right here.
Really good game, but I'm taking Clemson. 28-24.
Oh, no.
I think Kelly Bryant, the mobile threat he provides, and I'll take the booze, but the mobile threat that he provides is just going to be a little too much on Saturday night, and I think that defensive line, that right side of the Tech offensive line, has not looked great against ODU. I think they're going to attack that. If Clemson's secondary is as healthy as it's looking, I think that Cam Phillips, will be productive, but I don't know if there'll be enough outside of that. But I think Josh Jackson will keep this game very interesting Saturday night, and I think Tech's defense will make it very interesting. But I think 24-20, 28-24, something like that will be. So we like to thank you for watching. Me and Evan are going to stick around for a little bit. We'll take some Facebook Live questions. We want to thank Jackson and David, especially Josh from College Football Country.
Thank
you can
you,
check
Josh.
him out.
Absolutely.
You can check him out, cfbcountry.com, and you can buy the T-shirt that both Josh and David are wearing.
It's awesome.
The Beamer, Fuente, Foster, and Buzz. We'd encourage you to buy it. Check out the site. And we're going to have a lot of stuff on the Tech Lunch Pail coming up over the next 2 days to get you ready. So, gentlemen, thank you. We know you have some other engagements. Me and Evan are going to stick around.
Make sure you go to the women's soccer game tonight against Boston College at 7. So
big game tonight.
Can I pull a Frank Beamer right now? Can I pull a Frank Beamer?
You going to drop the mic?
Hey.
There we go.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.
There we go. And me and Evan are going to keep taking some questions here. So we're glad you've been watching. We're going to hit those questions real quick, and then we're going to sign off. So, Evan, what questions do you have here for us?
Well, my iPhone just overheated, so it just came back on. It said that temperature was too hot in the sun. So let me pull back up.
We're going to hit one question real quick, and then we're going to sign off.
Oh, this is tough. There's a lot of questions. Thank you all for your.
I will get them a little later today or tomorrow before the game as well. So
let's see. Hold on. Give me just a second. I want to pick the best one, I think. Let's see.
Do what? We do 5 questions?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we're going to do a few questions here. We got a little more time.
Well, this one's coming from Carrie Rhodes back in Richmond. She wants to know, she said, tough matchup this week. What will be the key for Tech to stay in the game?
Stay in the game. Well, you have to start with that elite Clemson defensive line. The offensive line has not had this big of a challenge at all this year. ODU was a nice warm-up as one of the best group of 5 defensive lines.
Sure.
But that's still the group of 5. We're talking about a Power 5, one of the best defensive lines this century in college football. A bunch of NFL players. Kyle Chung and Braxton Pfaff, especially on the right side of that offensive line, need to step up. They have to step up their game Saturday night. And then you got to see the young receivers, guys like Sean Savoy, C.J. Carroll, Hezekiah Grimsley we've seen start to play a little more. Those guys need to step up as well. Eric Kuma has been very quiet. Those guys need to step up. And then you just have to play clean football and make some things happen on special teams.
I think it's all about keeping the offense on the field. I was listening to the Hokie Pod with Allegretta, Lays, and Burnup yesterday. One thing they touched on is how Justin Fuente likes to put points on the board, a lot of points on the board, and do it quickly.
Yeah.
But I think the key to this game is actually keeping Virginia Tech's offense on the field and not letting Kelly Bryant have a ton of time. I think at halftime, Tech should aim to have won the time of possession in this game. And the other thing is turnovers. Josh mentioned it. If Tech's going to want to stay in this game, they have to limit the turnovers.
Yeah.
I give them, I think 1 turnover is fine, 2 you're pushing it if you're going to try and win this one. I think that's going to be tough to do, is not turn the ball over more than 2 times. You just can't turn the ball over.
And I love how you mentioned the time of possession battle. And we saw that against West Virginia. That defense was fantastic in that first half, and they had no gas in the second half.
Sure.
Fortunately, Josh Jackson matured. He grew up right before our eyes, and he just took off in that second half. So let's get another question.
Let's get another one here. Dwight Lester, a part of our Tech Lunch Pail, didn't really ask a question, but he brings up a good point. He says good opportunity for Devin Hunter to show his cover skills. He didn't dress last week because of an injury. He said he was banged up.
A sickness or something.
Yep.
So,
but Fuente did say he'd be ready to go this week. Devin Hunter is someone we haven't seen much of, actually, in the first 4 games in the second. He's gotten in a little bit. I don't know what the exact reasoning is. Of course, he's the biggest recruit being brought in the offseason. What do you think about Hunter and his chances to maybe make some plays tomorrow?
I think it's going to be interesting to see how much Hunter plays. I don't think he's going to play much. I really don't think
he'll play on
outside
special teams, of course.
Yeah, it's on special teams, but I think he's a true freshman. He came in fall camp, and he plays at a position where there's already a ton of talent. Devin Hunter, don't get me wrong, very bright future, and many teams in college football right now, I think he would be a starter. But I don't think you're going to see him a lot. I don't think he's going to have as big of a role as Divine Diablo had previously.
Sure.
I think Floyd's role is going to grow. But they're going to need Hunter to give a few good snaps. I think they're going to need to. Terrell Edmonds, obviously, he doesn't run out of gas. Like, the guy's the Energizer Bunny, basically, at Virginia Tech football. So, Devin Hunter, he's going to play, I think, a few plays on defense. We're going to learn a lot about Devin Hunter. Maybe tomorrow night, but I think later in the season you'll start to see his role grow a little more against the Boston Colleges of the world, where Bud Foster really is going to try to start bringing him in and see if he can handle a big role.
And maybe that bye week is really where he starts to get reps leading into that second half of the year.
Absolutely.
We move to Cole Massey's question. He says, Josh Jackson is getting a huge test with Clemson, having one of the best defenses in the country.
Yeah.
How can Josh keep from making some big game-changing mistakes?
Composure. It sounds like one of the cop-out answers of sort, but you have to have your composure. You have to have your head about yourself. Play with emotion. You should play with a lot of energy. You should be fired up. This is a Saturday night, prime time, playoff implications. But you have to play control. You have to think. You can't just do everything. We saw him making a poor assumption. You have to look. You can obviously sometimes you're going to have to make some quick decisions, especially against this defensive line. But you got to have control. You got to have your head on straight. And you cannot let any small mistakes get in your head. You cannot let that build up and go over you. You have to stay calm, composed. If something doesn't work, you move on. And if you get some momentum, ride it when you have it.
And our last question here, or last two, are actually really kind of some fun questions to kind of end we have here. First one is, where'd it go? Well, actually, first one, not really a fun one. What do you think about the new Tech logo? We have a question about that.
Oh, boy. I think that my response right there says it.
I'm going to agree with
brutal.
you on that.
It's brutal.
How about Chase Farrell wants to know, are we going to be doing the Hokey Pokey on Saturday?
That's a great question. We'll see at halftime. They're still sticking with that third, fourth quarter thing. If it doesn't work Saturday night, you burn that idea and you get back to the Hokey Pokey and figure out something next year. If it works, well, it should work on Saturday night because no one will really care because the game will be a huge game, so it almost doesn't matter what you do. But if it somehow doesn't work, then you know it's a terrible idea and you get rid of it.
I think Vic's going to be doing the end of the third quarter thing. That's just a prediction for me.
I've heard some interesting stuff on that.
Oh, really? Okay.
And I cannot comment on that. So
Interesting.
We'll see.
I think that's a couple fun comments. Nick McDaniel says, I feel that the horse could plow through any defense. talking about the treadmill
Yeah,
horse and
well,
everything. But
I don't know why he doesn't have eligibility. That's a whole nother story. But
yeah, Tim, I got to say this was really fun. I mean, how awesome to have Josh Parcells on. What a great guy, great alumni,
Absolutely.
representing Virginia Tech, doing what he's doing now. And kudos to you and the job you've done with Tech Lunch Pail, building it your senior year. And I do have to give a quick shout out to the equipment team, getting this all set up.
Yeah.
We had a comment on Facebook, guys, that this was a great audio quality. And
that's fantastic.
Shout out to
we'll give it specifically to Harley Taylor and Jake Roth, who have done a fantastic job with our filming. And we also have Chase Farrell, who's put all the equipment together. We want to thank the people at the house that live here. Jake Roth's one of those people. We'll give specific shout-outs. Spencer Elliott.
There's Frank Beamer right
Frank
there.
Beamer just casually going around
Hey, Coach!
campus. And he's giving us a wave over here. Obviously enjoying himself. The legendary
awesome.
coach. What a
How cool
moment
is
right
that?
there. What a moment off camera here. But we've had a lot of fun. Evan, thank you for being a part of this. We want to thank Jackson Pugh, David Cunningham, and we want to really thank Josh Parcells for coming on today. It's been a blast, I think.
It really has.
And we're really excited about tomorrow. I know me and Evan are hoping we're wrong with our predictions
Absolutely.
really badly.
I hope I'm very wrong.
Yeah, we have tons of great stuff on techlunchpail.com, including Henry Scott. His hype-up video for tomorrow night is on there. It is fantastic.
One
You
of the
should
best ones
watch
I've
it.
seen.
You should watch it about 30 times tonight and then maybe like 50 times at your tailgate tomorrow, maybe a couple times. And Hokie Vision, if you want to use that, I think Henry would be fine with that. But, yeah, what a big game tomorrow night. Number 2 Clemson, number 12 Virginia Tech, the defending national champions, the ACC Kings right now, come to Blacksburg. Can Virginia Tech reassert themselves at the top of the ACC? It should be an excellent game to watch. Should be an insane atmosphere. So, folks, thanks for watching. Thanks for joining us today on the first Tech Lunch Pail Live.